Choosing an offshore boat is a little like choosing a shelter the week before a hurricane. In calm weather, almost anything looks fine. You can get away with thin walls and a pretty view. The sea is patient that way. It lets bad choices feel good for a surprisingly long time. And then, one afternoon, the wind shifts, the barometer drops, the forecast stops making sense, and suddenly the only question that matters is whether the thing you bought can actually hold together. That's when boats stop being a hobby and start being a decision you have to live with. Out there, nobody cares how the boat looked at the dock, how clever the galley is, or what the broker told you about resale. Big waves have a way of making every shortcut honest. So the question becomes simple. Which boats have actually earned the trust of sailors who have been rolled, knocked down, and still made it home? These are 5 offshore sailboats that older solo sailors lean on when the weather stops negotiating. We start with the Hans Christian 33, heavy displacement cruiser, designed from the keel up for one job: keep you alive offshore. At first look, 33 feet sounds small for a serious ocean boat. Then you see the number that matters: roughly 17,200 pounds of displacement on a boat that length. That's not a cruising number, that's a survival number. The Hans Christian 33 does not sail well in 6 knots of breeze, and it never pretended to. Once the wind gets past 12, the boat starts doing what it was built to do. It stops being tossed around and starts cutting through the sea, while lighter, beamier boats bounce on top of the waves and punish the crew. Full keel, skeg-hung rudder, deep cockpit, heavy teak joinery inside. The kind of build where you can hear the difference when you step aboard. Owners who've had 2 or 3 of them usually say the same thing, which is that they trust the boat with their lives in any weather. You will not win races in one. That is not the trade. The trade is that you arrive dry, in a cockpit that feels like a bunker, inside a hull built like it was meant to outlive you. On paper, the cutter rig is flexible and easy to balance short-handed. In practice, it means a solo sailor can reef the main, ease the Genoa, and the boat keeps its manners. The only real catch is the teak. All that craftsmanship that looks so beautiful in photos demands real maintenance. Skip it for 2 seasons and you'll pay for it. But if you want a bulletproof 33-foot boat that still feels like a proper sailor's home below, there aren't many honest competitors. The second is the Mariner 36, and this one shows what a properly built fiberglass hull from an earlier era can still do. Fin keel, skeg-protected rudder, moderate displacement. Unlike a lot of modern fin keel boats that feel nervous in real weather, the Mariner 36 sits in that medium-heavy range where you get decent passage speed without giving up stability. The capsize screening number on this boat is around 1.83. That's well under the threshold of 2 that was developed after the 1979 Fastnet disaster, when only 86 boats out of 303 finished. That formula was never meant to predict everything, but it does give you a rough sense of which boats are built to take a beating. The Mariner 36 passes it comfortably. Comfort ratio is around 30, which means the motion is steady enough for long passages, rather than the quick, snappy roll of a lighter boat. The cockpit is deep. The interior is classic and simple, built to be maintained at sea rather than admired at a show. One warning for buyers: the New Hampshire-built Mariner 36 gets confused with some unrelated Asian boats that share the name. Do the homework, look at the hull numbers, verify the builder. The right Mariner 36 is a boat that will let you leave in rough weather in the morning and come home safe by evening without drama. Third is the rival 34. This is a British boat, and you can feel it in the design. It was built for the North Sea, the English Channel and the western approaches, meaning it was built for water that does not forgive mistakes. Around 5.4 tons of displacement, high ballast ratio, deep keel, skeg-hung rudder. Certified to Lloyd's 100A1 standards, which mattered when it was built and still tells you something about the construction today. The motion is what experienced owners always mention first. Sea kindly, steady, predictable, dry when most boats are not. The Rival 34 earned its real reputation in the 1976 O-Star transatlantic race, when the designer Peter Brett sailed his own boat through 60-knot winds, took a rogue wave that cost him the mainsail, and still brought the boat through balanced and recoverable all the way to the finish. That kind of story sticks for a reason. Owners describe it as one of the most reassuring boats they've sailed in heavy weather. Not fast, not exciting in light air, awkward in a tight marina. Offshore, where it actually belongs, it stops feeling like a yacht and starts feeling like a quiet partner that will carry you home. Fourth is the Nicholson 38. This is what the overbuilt fiberglass era looked like when the builders still had something to prove. Camper and Nicholson's designed it for demanding European waters and then kept improving it. The hull is thick in a way that's almost absurd by modern standards. The long keel makes it track like a train through following seas, and the comfort ratio sits around 35, which is serious offshore territory. What makes it particularly interesting for a solo sailor is the ketch rig. In a sudden squall, you don't have to rush up on deck and wrestle the main. You can drop it, run under headsail and mizzen, keep the boat balanced, and carry on. That flexibility is worth a lot when you're alone at night and the wind is building faster than the forecast said it would. The high ballast ratio means the boat stays stiff, carries sail longer without getting overpressed, and stays composed as the breeze climbs. The center cockpit and aft cabin won't feel roomy compared to modern wide-stern cruisers, but offshore, what you get instead is a protected position, a structure that doesn't complain, and the confidence to keep pushing through conditions that would have a lighter boat begging for shelter. It's been circumnavigated many times over, and the label that keeps coming up is bomb-proof. The last one is the Bermuda 40 Mark II from Hinckley, and this is the rare boat that somehow looks perfect tied up in a New England harbour and still holds together in real weather. Displacement to length ratio around 372, thick, heavy fiberglass hull, the kind of construction you only see from yards that cared more about reputation than production numbers. The Bermuda 40 doesn't ride over waves the way a lighter boat does. It settles into them. It carries its weight with a quiet authority that most boats have to fake. The rig is a yawl, which isn't just a design choice, it's a control system. The small mizzen mast set aft isn't really there to add power, it's there to balance the helm. Adjust the mizzen and you can take pressure off the rudder, which makes a real difference on a long solo passage when you're trying to save energy and keep the autopilot working properly. In heavier weather you can sail under jib, staysail and mizzen, which lowers the center of effort, reduces heel, and keeps the boat moving without overloading anything. Below the waterline, the centerboard gives you flexibility that very few offshore boats offer. Shallow draft when you need to duck into a harbour, deeper draft for proper upwind work and tracking at sea. None of this is about speed. All of it is about making a long passage less punishing on the sailor. Look at these 5 boats together and a pattern starts to show. None of them is the fastest. None of them is the easiest to dock. None of them will be the cheapest to maintain properly over 20 years, because they're all older and most of them are built with materials that demand attention. But every one of them shares something that matters more offshore than any of that. They do not fall apart when conditions go bad. That is the whole point. Out there, especially when you're sailing alone. The question isn't how quickly you can get somewhere. It's whether the boat will still take care of you when you haven't slept properly in 2 days, when the waves keep building instead of easing, and when the wind just refuses to back down. The boats you can trust in that situation are almost never the ones getting the most attention at a boat show. They're heavier, they're slower, they look dated next to the wide-stern production boats, and they're still here because they've earned the right to be. If you've owned one of these 5 or something similar, I'd like to hear what held up and what didn't. Especially the solo sailors. What actually mattered offshore, what surprised you, what you'd do differently next time. That's the kind of thing the brochures never tell you. If you want more of these straight, practical rundowns of boats worth trusting when the weather turns, subscribe and leave a like. This channel exists for exactly that conversation.